all mountain
Oh, yes.
Freeride boards.
Yes.
All mountain Freeride boards that we've ridden all of them, and these were our picks here at the shop.
Specifically Freeride. So a lot of this is not, we're not looking to ride the mountain fakie. This is going to be a little bit more omnidirectional. Is that the term?
Sure. Yeah. And not super powder specific either.
Exactly.
So no like big crazy swallowtails. And at some point we will do our all mountain freestyle top 5 as well.
Exactly.
But all mountain Freeride, line them up.
Let's start with the Karuas Transition Finder 157.
Transition Finder Plus.
Plus, exactly.
So the difference between the Plus and the standard Karuas, you can tell one thing, all the standard Karuas, which are amazing, white top sheet, red base, sintered 2000 on the standards. The Plus has a greater componentry of carbon in the construction, notably lighter, and a full graphite sintered race base on this thing. So
this thing will haul
super
ass.
fast, super light, crazy high performance. The 157 comes in a 26.8 millimeter waist, which I love. Like the closer to 27 for me, the better.
Yeah, no, and I'm starting to gravitate towards that too. It's taken me a little bit longer for Mark to keep pushing me to ride these wider boards, but at a size 8.5, 9 foot, I can get on this thing. There is zero toe drag, and you can get this on edge, you know, almost like Nicholas Wilkins doing, but at least I'm almost catching you now.
Yeah. So they take a little bit more torque, but they handle that torque and like no toe and heel drag, which is awesome on the groomers. Also awesome in the powder. The wider surface area floats better and you don't get that drag. It has 18 millimeters of taper, very directional, plenty of tail on this. And they rate this as a, in their funny Karua way, because they're hilarious guys out of Germany, they're like switchability, and they're like, hell yeah.
Oh yeah,
So
you can ride this switch.
It's definitely got plenty of tail on there. And a nice full nose shape. I like the longer lines. They do really good job with the blends. So the side cut on this is actually pretty standard. It's not an overly straight side cut.
But they enter quite straight.
Oh,
and that's
really?
the one thing that I've loved about Karua, not to cut you off, but all of them, they enter fairly straight. So right here, you know, when you get on that edge, it's not abrupt. It glides into that edge. And that's what I found phenomenal with this brand, like on top of any other board brand I've ridden.
Surfy response. So we're going to talk about that later. We have a
new rating system.
We have a new rating system, how to rate boards. We'll get into that a little bit later. But definitely on the surfy as opposed to the responsive side of the scale.
Yep.
Love these guys. They're super fun. They think a little bit outside the box.
And this thing is just gorgeous.
Transition Finder Plus. So 157 in the Transition Finder Plus, and that's the only length in the high performance construction. The standards come in a 150 and a 154 and the 157. What do we got next?
All right,
you got
Mark.
a banked country for me?
I got a bank country. Where is it? Okay, this is the big boy. This one is the 163 wide that we have to show you. But what size did you end up riding?
I ended up riding the 5'9".
Yes, that's
But
right.
I really want the 160 wide. And I think in comparing all the apples to apples and different types of apples as we do here in the 5,
we should talk about
we're
the
going
wide.
to talk about the 160 wide, which is 26.5 millimeter waist and has only a 2 millimeter taper. But they got other stuff going on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's start with, well, who designed this board? I mean, it's Cannon and Temple. How can this thing not be amazing for the Pacific Northwest? Seriously. GNU, again, these guys are not even that far from home here.
No.
You know, we could be there in about 6 hours. But it doesn't have a ton of taper, but when you look at this tail, we're out of frame, aren't we?
It's volume reduced, essentially.
100%.
Yeah,
yes.
It's very directional. There's plenty of tail there for switch riding and landing switch.
So it gets a hell yes.
So it gets a hell yes.
It gets a hell yes as well.
It gets a hell yes, but there's definitely a lot more nose in surface area and length. Setback stance, really good GNU construction. They run sintered bases, which I really like. As much as I love libs, it's one thing that they did with this board and a few others is put a race sintered base on it, a graphite sintered base. Cannon and Temple are pretty competitive, and they want to win
Oh, yeah,
Baker and
yeah.
other bank slalom events. Baker's not the only one they do. Like
No.
they travel for bank
Dirksen,
slalom
they do
events.
a bunch.
They've
Oh,
been
yeah. Yep.
up to the Neil Edgeworth.
You guys should probably make your way to Turning Man this year. February 25th, maybe? Yeah, that'd be ideal.
When I rode the 59, really unique feel, very surfy again. So they went with clean lines at the ends as opposed to like really sharp and aggressive and responsive.
Progressive magnet traction, right?
That's
so
the
it's
cool
not,
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the most unique feeling thing about this board. Instead of having magnet traction from front to rear, there's basically no magnet traction in the front half of this board, and it progressively gets a little bit more radical towards the back, and it really had the sensation of fins for me. Like the front was loose and easy to deal with, and the back I could stand on super strong and push on it, and they held. And
that makes sense given the riding
third turn,
style
and I
of
was
those
making
guys.
like woo noises.
Yeah.
Like it was really cool, very unique for both like the Mervyn world and certainly compared to anyone else. No one else has this, and Temple and Cannon came up with it.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. And I also rode the 5.9, still at a size 9 foot, no issues, no overhang, but I would go the wide in this model just for surface area underfoot. The more we're free riding, we're lucky. We're living in Nelson. Of course we want volume underfoot. That is going to be always better powder riding.
Yeah,
there's no question. Sure. And there's advantages in carving, corduroy. I don't see a disadvantage of a wide board anymore.
The only disadvantage, here it is, in super variable conditions, when you go from powder to really hard pan, it'll want to stand you up. All of a sudden the board has more leverage on you than you on it when it's wider. And that's the only time when a wider board will kind of get you, is if you're in super variable conditions. If you're in, trustworthy, consistent conditions, either hard or soft, I love the wide boards.
Yep.
Love them.
No, agreed. And this actually, of all 5, I would say would be the most universal in all conditions. This board is really going to attack everything, but is definitely lending itself to our top 5 in the free ride category.
For sure.
Yeah.
From the Mervyn world, this is our pick. Can I drink this?
All right, up next, here we go. Now our offering from Jones, the 158 Mind Expander. Now this comes in a multitude of sizes, but 5.8 we've both ridden a ton. This is probably one of the top it is one of the top sellers in the shop. There's no question. Even in split mode, the split sells like crazy, but this thing is at our local 3 hills. This thing's pretty awesome.
Probably the most popular board in the rack.
Yep. Shaped by Christensen. So what he's brought to the table, which is really unique, is this 3D spoon nose. And it'll be a little tricky for me to show it, but hopefully you can see down there. But what that's also doing, what I loved about the Karuas, how they would softly get on edge, this is also helping do the exact same thing in his way. Both work very well. It's a little more aggressive entry, but the spoon,
because it's flared up,
it's
just like it's
glides
not there.
you over. Exactly.
So you get a lot of good feeling, positive feeling in the middle and tail of this board without having that nose be grabby or hooky at all. Super directional.
20 mils of taper.
A lot of taper.
So a ton of taper on this guy.
That reduced volume in the tail section makes it trim out really well.
Yeah.
You don't have to stand on the back leg. I mean, Chris Christensen's obviously it comes from that whole surf world, so he wants to stand on it sort of more balanced instead of back foot heavy. This nose is gorgeous. Tons of float in the nose, but when you put it on a groomer, it's incredible.
What's the waist width on this guy?
On the it's 26.8 on the 159.
So there
for
we
158,
go.
sorry. On the 158, it's 26.8.
So we're in the volume shifted realm again. Short. It's not a short fat, so to speak, but it's volume shifted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was the closest thing to some of the latest boards that I've been smaller companies I've been shaping with. This was the closest one. One improvement from the years before.
We have camber.
Camber in it, and that was the one.
Thank you, Jeremy.
The one tiny complaint from advanced riders was that it just didn't have that drivey snap coming out of the turns. Now that they put the camber in there, it's yeah, it's a bit of a game changer. And people loved it already, but now I think it's even better.
Yep.
And that Jones, super good with this, like a huge range of sizes. So in the women's, they make a 42, a 46, and a 50. In the men's, they start with a 46. It's wider than the women's 46.
Yep, exactly.
And it's a 46, a 50, a 54, 58, 62, 66.
Is there a 66?
There's a 66.
Wow, why didn't we order that?
I don't know, man.
That's a monster snowboard.
Yeah.
That is big, absolutely.
And like you can ride these down. You know, like the 58's plenty of board for myself.
Like everything Jeremy produces, you know, it's going to have a race grade base. This is a sintered, I believe it's a 9900, or I can't remember what terminology they were using. Fozzie doesn't have his glasses on, so I better look here. But sintered 8,000 or 9,000 base.
People love the feel of these. Like the construction is just, well, not just the base, but like the overall, like the way they're pressed, the resin they use.
There's no automotive clear coats on this top sheet. And this is a durable top sheet. And and I should bring that up. Some other brands are still using some clear coats like that. You know, Jeremy, this is so freaking durable for what it is. And, you know, the impact of the environment is probably nil compared to what,
it's a big one. It doesn't use a lot of colors. Like
Yep.
the white and black goes really well. Like it looks great.
So absolutely top 5. I'm surprised this didn't make our last year's, but the Stratos really edged it out. But now, you know, we're seeing a lot of reason
I think for
to
the
put
Freeride,
this-
for the Freeride that we talk about, which would
This is the
involve a
one.
lot of like steeper, deeper, etc. That's the board from Jones for sure for us.
What's next, Fozzie?
Territory manager.
All right. Getting into Burton territory here.
Next up is our Burton territory manager, family tree line. So this specific one's a 54 that we have in the store, but I had the pleasure of riding the 60. But you rode this one.
I rode this one a lot. I ride for Jake Day. I had this, and I basically closed out the season on it. I love this board. I've ridden a hometown hero a fair bit, and this board just agrees with me better. I do know what it is. Again, same thing I talk about with Karuas. This isn't quite as aggressive as it enters on edge. I like that. I don't think it's as tapered as much either. What's the taper on this guy?
8 mils.
So 8 mils, yeah, 8 mils
And
taper.
a hometown's similar. I think it's 10 mils.
Yeah, maybe
So
a little
it's
more.
pretty similar in the taper.
Yep.
I would tend to agree when I rode the 160. I just kind of like the lines a little bit better, cleaner in the front, so it was a little less aggressive and responsive. For
But
some
holds and edge.
people, responsive is everything. For a lot of people,
we are on the surfy scale of our scale
I like
from
'em a
surf
little
to
bit
responsive.
More,
Yeah.
I like them a little bit more clean and surfy. Yeah, plenty of board there. The 160 might have almost been too much for me. Like I might have been more
Yeah, I wasn't jumping on that one.
54.
Yeah, this is good. A noticeable, I don't know what they've changed with the base material, but this, whatever's going on here with this, probably WFO, a lot better than years past. This thing ripped. This was a really quick board. Again, you know, all the standards that we get from Burton, especially the channel. I love the channel. I did a lot of micro adjusting that day. This is a really advantageous system, and I don't talk about it enough, but I love it. I nerd out on this stuff. I'm reference. I'm 4 mils behind reference. I'm an inch behind reference. I'm constantly, and I ended up riding this very set back, and it was great. You know, we were on groomers too. We had a little bit of pow that day, maybe 4 or 5 inches. Really impressive board. It's no surprise with solars behind it too that this would be kind of geared toward BC riding and the stuff we do around here. But an absolute killer in the top 5, no question there. And a really cool addition to the family tree lineup.
So one thing with this territory manager, if you like to go big with flat landings or any sort of landings, really, I really think that this is the board out of all of them. And so much so from the squeeze box technology.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of the board heavily flexing behind your back binding, this board flexes under your back binding.
So it stabilizes.
And it's that little section that normally flexes and bends way up is way stiffer.
Stabilizes.
And it, like, anytime I've been on actually most Burtons, and that's why a lot of the like top slope style guys like love the Burtons, is that'll stand you right back up. So you hardly ever get those like big wheelie out
No, that's a
moments
good
on
point.
landings. So super stable for an overall flex. It's not super crazy. Where you want it stiff, it's stiff.
No, that's a good point, man. Yeah.
And
yeah.
again, compared to the hometown, I just think a little bit cleaner, a little bit more surfy. Sharing a lot of the stuff with like the hometown, of course, is like very, very popular. And we'd like to say that this is your board now.
Well, I did steal this board from our local area rep, so yeah, I consider this my board now.
Yeah, and you
That's
put
why
some
it's
miles on
a
it.
little bit scratched
You
up.
put
This
some
isn't
miles
one
on
off
it.
the wall.
So it says a
obviously,
lot
yeah.
about this thing. It's definitely directional, of course,
Oh yeah.
but maybe less so than the Mind Expander or the Karua from that perspective.
Yep, absolutely. And Fawcett, what sizes does the territory manager come in?
A bunch, actually, considering its family tree. Sometimes only come in a couple sizes, but it comes in a 42, a 48, a 154, a 160, and a big boy 165.
Oh, that'd be a stiff
Yeah, that'd
monster,
be
that one.
like the
for
160 for me was like on the edge of a little
Sure. Well,
too
that's
much
why I
board
like
for
this.
me.
This is a stiff
I
54.
I think the
but
54 would be awesome for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one. The territory manager you might consider downsizing.
Absolutely. All right, so number 5.
Capita Black Snowboard of Death.
The board is back. And when I say that, it's just,
It never really went away.
it softened up for a couple years, and I think some of the fan base may have been disappointed. So it's been supercharged actually last year. We really noticed it
Yeah,
last year's model.
absolutely.
And yeah, the Freeride beast is back. First of all, the one thing I love about this, and it's, you can see it right away, I'm really into monochromatic, minimalistic, and I love this top sheet. It's Capita's skinless top sheet too, and the durability of this, I mean, the demo we had, we rode the hell out of that thing, and it looked great. It's not like when everybody went to no more automotive clear coats, we want our top sheets to be, a little bit more eco-conscious, wicked, but that there was also a durability issue for a while there. You
Absolutely.
threw it in the back of the pickup, back of your car. They were just looking haggard so quickly. So Capita really has remedied that. And I don't know what exactly it is, but it's a matte finish that just feels fantastic. You can see the wood grain in this light veneer. Just aesthetically, grabbing this off the rack, damn, it looks like a killer board.
What's funny is initially when they developed this board, it was designed as essentially like a park freestyle board. And the way they developed the lines and how clean the lines were, all of a
it's
sudden,
full Freeride.
the whole team was like, this is the Freeride machine.
Yeah, it's full. This is a
So,
full Freeride.
Now, I would
snowboard.
say this, taper-wise, there's 1.1 millimeters of taper on this 165
And that surprises me. I almost feel like that's wrong.
Like that's
But-
essentially nothing. Like that's just
Yeah.
the cleaning up of the shape. So
But it rides like it has taper.
It does.
It really does.
It does. I ride it back. I ride it back quite a bit. A little bit my style anyway, but like in the deeper stuff, like it handles it super well. I'll shift it back. I guess if you're gonna ride it in the park or something like that, you can go back to more of a centered stance.
But that exit side cut really lends itself to settle this board down too. Similar to what we see in the bank country. They'll both, they're not a crazy taper, but these will ride powder, no issue. You just shift them back a little bit, and that's ideal.
Yep.
And that's why we have an insert pattern like that. Another big thing with Capita that you love talking about, so do I, because this is, I don't know why everybody doesn't do this, but these guys do, and it's amazing.
Stone ground, textured, patterned base. So essentially, it's a different process where they run it over this stone wheel that has a really specific pattern over it, and it has these like chevrons essentially, and it channels the water out so well. Anything above minus 15 Celsius of snow temp,
we're riding on
you're
water.
gliding on a little micro thing of water.
Absolutely.
Sometimes if it's slushy, you're riding on water.
Well, you're hauling ass, you're melting the snow, you're riding water, and this is helping just blast that off the base that much quicker. You're that much faster.
Reduces the suction too. It's notably faster.
Oh yeah.
So these things haul
no question.
ass. It has a little bit of an effect on tracking too. So the boards track really well when they have what they call a base structure to them. that's like $100 to $125
Yeah,
value that you get for free with these boards. So, and no one else really does it. It's a mothership thing. It's a great value, and this is also like on this Black Snowboard of Death, like a 4,000 sintered, pretty much graphite race base.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
comparable with
yeah.
all the boards we talked about today, no question. Again, back to the wide story. You know, we rode this in a 5.9 standard, but we would probably both gravitate to riding a wide. This one being 26.7 at the waist.
Yep. On the big boy, this is the 65 wide. Yep. They may have 4 wides. So the wides come in a 57, a 61, a 65, and there's a 169 wide, which would be a monster.
I'd want the 57 being, you know, I'm almost 5'8", 150, 155 pounds. That's kind of where I would go. Again, we like the wides, so it's not just for carving, it's just underfoot there's volume. So for riding POW, for free riding, for what this board is designed for, I just want that little bit extra underfoot. I think it makes sense. And we're seeing that with consumers now too. It's even at a size 9, I'm not afraid to ride a wide board whatsoever.
Standard widths is in a 56, a 59, and a 62. So they actually make 4 wide widths and 3 standard widths. So more wides. I think people are catching on to that now.
Yeah, absolutely.
The wide boards, like not having that toe and heel drag is massive. Like you can get so much more performance out of your board when it's tipped way up on edge and you have that confidence that you're not going to boot out on either side. Yep. It has that leverage against you where it feels like it's really supportive and holding you up. I'm all about the wides.
5 years ago, a bunch of these boards would have been under 25 at the waist. Now everything is 25.5 and up. And most of them are 26 and up.
Yeah.
So it's something to note and look for, and don't be afraid of it. Because, you know, I fought a little bit. Mark was always trying to get me to ride. I was riding a 24/7 for the longest time. And there's reasons to use those boards, but this is really advantageous. And, you know, in the long run, it's, especially in POW, you're not going to be working as hard. And that's, you know, your best days are only going to be better. Anyway,
100%. We had a couple honorable mentions.
Yeah.
So that's the 5. That's the 5 that we selected for All Mountain Freeride. A couple honorable mentions that were super close, and we had a tough time not sort of putting them in. One of them was the Yes Pick Your Line. So this is DCP's board. We have the 161 here, which I also rode. This is a super cool feature. The little chakras light up. I don't know how often you'll actually get to do that at a party or something, I guess, or if you put it just at the right angle in the board rack.
Pretty amazing, though.
But
I definitely dig that.
I loved this board. Super well balanced, definitely directional. One thing that I was super stoked on, I couldn't taco the nose on this thing. So I have a pretty aggressive heel turn, I'll say, and I weigh 185. So on most boards, I'm able to kind of fold that nose up. And I couldn't do it on this. But at the same time, it wasn't hard to turn. It didn't feel or ride stiff in any way, but just super supportive. It's got a couple cutaways down here to get you the taper that instead
underbite.
Underbite. Thank you. Underbite.
And that's Alex Warburton at his best.
100%.
Alex the guy's a genius. And this again is just something I absolutely love. Sometimes the magna traction was a bit too much for me, almost draggy at times when you get into extreme mag. This is just really.
It was subtle.
Really cool.
It's really like just like a single one, and it kind of acted like fins. So the board was really surfy. I'd put it more at the surfy end of the spectrum than overly responsive. However, it would really hold on in that spot in particular, and I loved riding this board.
David killed it with this, and.
Cool graphic, like
every
a good
year,
concept of like, you know, sort of represents what DCP's all about, like splitting his time between Whistler and Costa Rica.
And if anybody remembers back to the uninked days, booyah, it's right there, the uninked pig. The other board, as I'm bashing stuff around here, what's the other board, Fawcett?
The other board, and I loved this thing, was the GNU Gremlin. I believe it was the predecessor to the Banked Country. I kind of have a feeling, I don't know how much those guys rode that, but it was similar enough to me.
Well, there's a little bit of the fun guy previous that I think that DNA made its way
Yeah,
into the Gremlin.
I mean,
maybe as well.
one of the
but
big things I liked
don't need
about
to
it,
get
it
into
was one of the
that.
first ones they made that was wide.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
in a average length, it was 26.5 at the waist, and you could tip that thing over. It didn't have like super crazy amount of mag. Had camber.
Well, you and Mikey had it the whole time, so I didn't even get a
loved
chance
it.
to ride it. But
I loved it,
oh,
and
yeah.
I didn't get on another canoe that I liked better until I got on the banked country. So I kind of just barely took the banked country over the Gremlin, but we can't keep them in the store. They're
that's
gone.
crazy.
A couple
I
of
mean,
our shop employees were like, "Yep, that done. Don't even ride anything else." Great.
No, those were both. You know, if we had a top 7, obviously that would have been it.
Yeah,
but,
and the
we
S and
had
the
to
other
mention
canoe.
those two for sure. So yeah, if we had a top 7, that would have been it. But top 5 seemed to be the hip thing to do. So those are our honorable mentions. But we appreciate all of you watching, and there's more to come. Trust me, this might be our new zone for the next little bit. But yeah, stay tuned for the next episode on the Tribute Lounge.